What happens when aggression collides with discipline? A lesson these bikers won't soon forget. It was a breezy Saturday evening at a small park on the outskirts of Fairfield, Connecticut, the kind of night where families gathered, children played soccer, and teenagers lounged on benches, earbuds in, lost in their phones. 16-year-old Michael was among them, sitting alone beneath a towering oak tree. His younger brother, Jordan, was finishing up soccer practice, and Michael had promised their mother he'd wait to walk him home. Dressed in a well-fitted black suit, a crisp white shirt, and polished black shoes, Michael kept to himself, casually flipping through a book he had brought along. He didn't react when the sound of roaring motorcycle engines cut through the evening air. Normally, it was the kind of noise that didn't warrant much attention, just a group of bikers passing by, their engines louder than necessary in such a peaceful setting. But tonight was different. Instead of moving on, the bikers slowed and pulled in near the soccer field. 5 of them, clad in leather jackets and dark jeans, stood out starkly against the backdrop of families enjoying their evening. They weren't laughing or chatting. Instead, they scanned the park, their eyes locking onto Michael with unsettling focus. Michael noticed them too. He glanced up briefly, meeting their stares. He wasn't one to assume the worst, but something in their gaze made his stomach tighten. He returned to his book, willing himself to stay calm. But calm is hard to maintain when you know you're being watched. The bikers didn't stay by their motorcycles. One of them, a stocky man with a shaved head, nudged his friend before striding toward Michael. That was when everything shifted. Michael sensed the man's heavy footsteps before he saw him clearly. When he finally looked up, he found the biker flanked by 2 others. Their expressions were unreadable, but deliberate. The trio moved with purpose, their leather boots crunching against the gravel path as they closed the distance. Michael's heartbeat quickened, but his expression remained steady. His mother had always told him, "Never let them see you sweat." Her words echoed in his mind as he dog-eared his page and set the book aside. "What are you doing here, kid?" the burly man asked, his voice rough and direct. Michael hesitated for a second, his brows knitting slightly in confusion. "Waiting for my brother," he replied evenly, polite but unwavering. The man smirked, exchanging a glance with his companions. "This doesn't seem like your kind of place," he said, his tone carrying an unspoken but pointed meaning. Michael's jaw tightened, though he forced himself to stay composed. "It's a public park," he answered, meeting the man's gaze without flinching. The biker's smirk faded. "Got a smart mouth, huh?" he muttered, stepping in closer. The other 2 subtly shifted, forming a semicircle around Michael. Parents and children were still scattered throughout the park, but no one seemed to notice the tension brewing beneath the oak tree. Michael scanned his surroundings, hoping someone might look his way. But the bikers had chosen their moment well. Most eyes were fixed on the soccer field, where Jordan's game was winding down. Michael's mind worked quickly. He wasn't afraid, at least not yet, but the situation was escalating, and he could feel it. Years of karate training had taught him to observe, anticipate, and react. But he also understood discipline. Fighting was never the first option. It was the last. "Look," Michael said, keeping his voice steady. "I don't want any trouble. I'm just here for my brother." But the biker didn't back off. Instead, he leaned in slightly, invading Michael's space. "Trouble?" he said, his voice low and taunting. "Who said anything about trouble?" Michael could feel their stares pressing down on him, their postures daring him to react. His hands rested loosely on his knees, but he was ready if it came to that. And then the man's next words made it clear. They weren't going to let him walk away that easily. "Maybe you should show us what you've got," the biker sneered, his friends chuckling quietly behind him. But Michael didn't move. He didn't even flinch. His hands remained where they were, relaxed on his knees. But his eyes never left the man in front of him. Years of training had taught him to read people, to interpret their posture, their movements, even the rhythm of their breathing. And these men? They weren't here for conversation. The burly man, clearly expecting Michael to crack under pressure, leaned in closer, his shadow looming over him. "What's the matter, kid? You scared?" he taunted. Michael exhaled slowly, choosing not to respond immediately. Fear wasn't the issue here. Time was. How long until Jordan's game ended? How long until someone in the park noticed what was happening? "Leave him alone!" The sudden voice cut through the tension. Michael turned his head slightly to see a young boy, no older than 10, standing a few yards away. Jordan. His little brother had wandered off the field, his forehead still glistening with sweat from the game. "Jordan, stay back," Michael called, his voice firm. But the bikers had already turned toward the boy, grinning like predators who had just spotted easier prey. "This your brother?" one of them asked, pointing a gloved finger at Jordan. "Maybe we should teach you both a lesson." Michael felt his pulse quicken, not with fear, but with determination. He rose to his feet slowly, his movements deliberate, his gaze locked on the group. Shifting his weight slightly, he planted his feet in the stance he had drilled endlessly at the dojo. "Don't touch him," Michael said, his voice calm but laced with steel. The burly man chuckled, shaking his head. "Look at this guy. Thinks he's tough." The others laughed along, their voices carrying across the park. But Michael didn't react. His expression didn't shift. His stance remained steady. And that, more than anything, unsettled them. "You're not going to do anything," one of the bikers sneered, stepping closer. That's when Michael finally spoke, his voice quiet, yet deliberate. "You don't want to do this." The laughter stopped. The bikers exchanged glances, momentarily thrown off by the confidence in his tone. But the moment didn't last. The burly man stepped forward and raised a hand to shove Michael. What happened next was so fast, so unexpected, that even the bikers weren't prepared. But Michael was. The man's hand shot forward, aiming for Michael's shoulder. But before it could make contact, Michael shifted seamlessly to the side, his body moving with practiced precision. The biker stumbled slightly, caught off guard, but Michael didn't stop there. In one swift motion, he stepped forward, his open palm striking the man's wrist and twisting it away. The biker grunted in pain, his hand dropping to his side as he staggered back, glaring at Michael with fury. "What the—" the man started, but Michael cut him off. "I warned you," he said, his voice calm yet firm. The other two bikers sprang into action, ignoring the warning. The first one swung a wild punch, but Michael ducked with ease, his movement smooth and controlled. He countered with a sharp kick to the man's knee, sending him collapsing to the ground with a pained cry. The second man hesitated for just a fraction of a second, long enough for Michael to pivot on his heel and deliver a spinning kick to his ribs. The impact knocked the air out of him and he staggered backward, clutching his side. By now, the burly leader had regained his balance, his face flushed with anger. He lunged at Michael, swinging both fists in a reckless brawler's attack. But Michael didn't fight strength with strength. He stayed light on his feet, weaving around the attacks with the kind of agility that only came from years of training. A crowd had begun to gather at the edge of the park, parents, kids, even soccer players pausing to watch. Someone had pulled out a phone, recording every second of what was unfolding. The leader charged again, this time reaching for Michael's lapel in an attempt to grab him. But Michael moved first. Twisting effortlessly out of the biker's grip, he delivered a precise strike to the man's solar plexus. The biker stumbled backward, gasping for air, his tough demeanor cracking under Michael's unwavering control. "Enough," Michael commanded, his voice ringing across the park. His stance remained firm, but there was no malice in his expression, only conviction. "I don't want to hurt you. Walk away." For a moment, It seemed like the bikers might listen. The leader wheezed, holding his chest as he glared at Michael. The two others were still on the ground, one clutching his knee, the other his ribs. The air was thick with tension, but Michael didn't waver. "Let's go!" the leader finally growled, motioning for his crew to follow. They limped back to their bikes, muttering curses as they started their engines. But just as they began to pull away, the leader turned back, pointing a finger at Michael. "This ain't over, kid," he spat, before revving his engine and speeding off. Michael didn't respond. He stood still, his breathing steady, as the roar of their motorcycles faded into the distance. Around him the crowd broke into applause. Murmurs of admiration and disbelief rippled through the onlookers. Jordan ran up to him, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. "Michael, are you okay?" Jordan asked, his voice unsteady. Michael knelt down, resting a reassuring hand on his brother's shoulder. "I'm fine," he said with a small smile. "Let's go home." But as they walked, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not yet. They made their way home in silence, the soft rhythm of their sneakers tapping against the pavement. Jordan kept sneaking glances at his older brother, his face a mixture of admiration and concern. Finally, he couldn't hold back any longer. "Michael," Jordan whispered, "how did you do that? I mean, they were huge, and there were 3 of them." Michael chuckled, shaking his head. "It's not about being bigger, Jordan," he explained. "It's about being prepared, staying calm, knowing when to act." Jordan frowned. "But what if they come back? That guy said it wasn't over." Michael stopped walking and turned to face him. "If they do, we'll handle it," he said firmly. "But listen to me, Jordan." His voice softened, becoming more serious. "What happened today wasn't about fighting. It was about standing up for myself and for you. Violence is never the answer, unless there's no other choice." Jordan nodded slowly, letting the words sink in. Michael gave his shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Remember, it's not about proving how strong you are. It's about knowing your worth and never letting anyone take that away from you." When they finally reached home, their mom was waiting on the porch, arms crossed, her face etched with concern. "You're late," she said, her voice laced with worry. Michael hesitated, glancing at Jordan, who remained quiet. "Something happened at the park," he admitted, choosing his words carefully. He didn't want to alarm her more than necessary, but honesty was important. As he recounted the story, her expression shifted, from fear to understanding, then to something else entirely: pride. When he finished, she sighed, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Michael," she said, "I'm proud of you for protecting your brother and yourself. But promise me one thing: don't take risks like that, unless there's no other way." "I promise," Michael replied. And he meant it. That night, as he lay in bed, he replayed the events in his mind: the bikers' aggression, the crowd's reaction, the leader's final words: "This ain't over, kid." But Michael wasn't afraid. He had learned long ago that fear only held power if you let it. Instead, he felt something deeper, a quiet sense of purpose. The world wasn't always fair, but moments like this proved that courage and discipline did matter. And deep down, he knew this wasn't just a test of his skills. It was a reminder. Standing up for what's right, no matter how intimidating, was always worth it. Michael's story is a powerful testament to resilience, preparation, and knowing when to take a stand. His unwavering confidence in the face of adversity reminds us that true strength isn't about size or intimidation. It's about self-worth and integrity. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect on how you can stand up for yourself or others in difficult situations. And remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right, despite it. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own inner strength, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. Because sometimes, the quietest voices make the biggest impact.